In this video, we'll be looking at the trade-offs page of 1000 Minds. And this is essentially the heart of 1000 Minds and what the paprika method is all about. In the trade-offs, you'll be given a series of two alternatives to choose between, each of which involves some sort of trade-off based on your criteria. The trade-offs you make are used to determine the preference values of your criteria, which are then used to score your alternatives. In other words, your trade-offs determine how important each of your criteria is to you relative to each other. And using those results, 1000 Minds will rank your alternatives from highest to lowest. For this example, we'll be using this decision-making model, where we're looking at different cities to move to. These are our criteria and their levels. These are the costs and other considerations, and our alternatives are different cities. The trade-offs only focus on the criteria and levels, so these costs and other considerations are not included. They will be included in the value for money chart in the results section later on. So let's take a look at how to make trade-offs. Notice right away that we're not asked a question where one choice is clearly better than the other. In the alternative on the left, the weather is bad, but the nightlife is excellent. In the alternative on the right, the weather is great, but there's no nightlife. That's why it's called trade-offs, because we're telling the system what we're willing to give up in order to gain something else. In this case, let's say that we prefer the alternative on the right. Here we have okay nightlife and a beach, or excellent nightlife but no beach. The alternative on the left sounds like the better option. In some cases, we might prefer both alternatives equally or dislike them equally, in which case we can say that they're equal. If we want to undo a decision, we can click Undo on the bottom here. If we want to undo all our trade-offs, we can do so by clicking on Restart. But keep in mind that once we click this option, it can't be undone. Maybe in this case, we're not certain about our preference. We can skip a question for now by clicking on Skip. There is a chance that we will still have to answer this question later, but it is likely that the question will be implicitly answered by the other trade-offs we make, in which case we won't have to answer it. We can also add any comments for a particular trade-off, which can be useful when reviewing our trade-offs later. However, any comments entered will disappear if we undo our trade-offs. By clicking on this button to the right, we can open the sidebar. Here we can rephrase the question to anything we like. The question will update automatically if we click anywhere outside the text box. We can even add subtitles here as well, and use Markdown to format the subtitle text. To see how accurately our decision model reflects our preferences so far, we can click to show the accuracy estimate. And you can see it up here. The more trade-offs you make, the higher your accuracy estimate will be. In general, it's good to aim for at least 90% accuracy, especially if your alternative scores and preference values are also important to you rather than just your alternative rankings. At the top, we see this bar here, which shows us our progress and how many trade-offs we've already completed. The number of trade-offs we have to make depends on the number of criteria we have, the number of levels on our criteria, whether or not we specified any impossible combinations, and the trade-offs we make. If we wanted the input of a group of people when it comes to making trade-offs, we could click the Enable Voting button. We will discuss more about the voting feature in another video. Once we're finished making trade-offs, we see our accuracy estimate here. To increase the accuracy, we can click on Go to Next Level and continue making trade-offs but with 3 criteria at a time rather than 2 criteria. We can also view our results right away by clicking Go to Results, or review the trade-offs we've made under Review and Undo, either on the bottom here, or in the menu on the left under Trade-offs. We will look at the results section in the next video, so for now, let's look at reviewing our trade-offs. Here we are given a list of all the trade-offs we made. We can change a trade-off by clicking on Revisit, or undo it by clicking Undo. As we see here, some of the trade-offs are marked as redundant. This is because as we continue to answer questions, some of our previous trade-offs were already implied by later ones, or by a combination of our later trade-offs, making this trade-off redundant. Of course, 1000 Minds didn't know this until we continued to make trade-offs, or otherwise it wouldn't have asked us the redundant questions in the first place. But as we see here, these questions do not have a revisit button because their answer is redundant, and therefore undoing them also won't have an effect on our results. If we wanted to undo all our trade-offs, we could do so easily by clicking Undo All Trade-offs in the top left corner. This will permanently delete all of our trade-offs. Now that you know how to make and review trade-offs, it's time for you to try it out yourself. Tell 1000 Minds what it is that you really care about.